Nice Corolla. Except it isn't.
This is RCR's website. This is where you click to submit your car for review. This is where you buy merch. This is where you sign up for bonus content and...
This is a Toyota Sprinter. But the name has little to do with the AE86 Sprinter Truino because not all Sprinters were sport coupes. Some were cars. Lower tier than the Corolla, but higher tier than the Tercel somehow. Because it looks like General Motors didn't even try to hide that this is a Japanese car. All that. Well, I mean, you open the hood, there it is, a 4A FE engine with no variable valves and a 3-speed automatic. Now that's kind of a clue. Most USDM Corollas had 4-speed automatics. This doesn't, and it has a minimalist dash, windy windows, General Motors Delco radio to give clueless parents the impression that they were buying an American car from Kunkelman Used Cars.
Kunkelman Used Cars, home of Kunkelman quality. If you don't like it, we'll shit in your mouth.
Driving impressions. It's a Corolla with no overdrive. I'm here trying to count the shifts because I didn't believe that this 1990s Toyota product only had 3 speeds. I'm laying into it, and it's not shifting. The engine's revving too high. Oh, there really isn't a 4th gear. Toyota's A131L gearbox was an Eisenwarner farm-out job that appeared in cheap stuff that they made. We're Toyota. Normally we're swinging at every pitch, but we're just gonna phone it in today. Here's a cheap 3-speed to squeeze every yen we can out of the E100 chassis. Yeah, we know the A131L had solenoid problems, but look, the Sprinter is going to America, and they're used to 3-speed transmission taking whale shits. What? It's not gonna even say Toyota on it. So there's no losing face here. Well, what about the gear shift lever? Are we gonna put a new, gear lever in there? No! Just block off the space where the OD button was. Nevertheless, this is still a good buy in 2021. Geo was General Motors' blanket of subterfuge for every overseas gray market car they could get their hands on. What I don't understand is, what did Toyota get out of this exchange? And it couldn't have been the Cavalier that they rebranded as a Toyota. I'd like to think that Toyota in the late 1990s was having such a good run with no worthy opponents that they became like Catherine Hahn's character in Parks and Recreation, when she said, if you like chess, which I do, but you have no one to play with, which I don't, sometimes you have to play against yourself. It's 1997. Our team is so strong, we're literally sending some of our second stringers over to the other sideline to make this game challenging. This is such a good buy in 2021 because some aging Gen Xers have had these in the backyards of their Myerstown quarter-acre properties. You see a Geoprism pop up on Facebook Marketplace. You answer the ad, go to the house, knock on the door, and a 13-year-old opens the screen door and doesn't say anything. Just stares at you from behind their yellow-tinted gamer glasses. You don't say anything either until a moan yell comes from the upper regions of this dimly lit bi-level. Jesse! Who's there? And Jesse still doesn't say anything. They continue standing, wall-eyed. Jesse! And then, like a startled fawn, Jesse bounds back into the darkened residence. And you hear some words being spoken. And the mother cross-dissolves out of the shadows, wearing a men's champion t-shirt, breasts dancing weakly and unbounded underneath. Yeah? You hear about the car then? Yes, hi. Thank you for taking the time for me and... It's out back then. Go around, the gate's unlocked. So you go around to the back of the bi-level, and you see a sun-bleached Geoprism sitting in the yard that the residents were just mowing around. The keys are in it! the mother calls indifferently from the upstairs window. You try the ignition and the car starts with no hesitation. You try the gear lever, it moves into drive, and the vehicle rolls up and out of the 4 tire craters it created.
I'll pay $700.
You holler from the driver's window, and from inside the house you hear something heavy and wet fall on a linoleum floor, followed by a resigned, "All right." And you drive away, knowing you have a machine that will run for 4 years with only 2 oil changes and 1 set of tires. 1997 Geoprism. Here comes Cousin Charlie, who hasn't been in touch since the last family reunion, appearing through a cloud of cigarello smoke, answering questions about the last 5 years like he was just asked to read out loud in class. This is the 2nd generation Geoprism, which is based on the AE92 chassis, which would technically make it an E100 platform, but it was known within General Motors as the S platform, a group that included the Toyota E90, E100, and E110 platforms. 1997 was the last year these were marketed under the Geo name before becoming Chevrolets, and for the final year, the Prism got a 1.6-liter 4AFE engine making around 100 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and 105 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM. Only 3 speeds to work with, so it has a hell of a hard time going uphill with any efficiency, but for the amount of horsepower it has, it accelerates pretty well. Julia says she's gotten this up to 90 miles an hour, which sounds kind of dicey when your existence is this precarious, because you gotta stand on these brakes. I mean, this car definitely had a life. You gotta plan ahead exit routes like a gender reveal party, but this is a great daily because those Toyota A-Series engines were easier to maintain and didn't have the same spare part availability issues as pricier dailies that threw up engine codes every 50 miles in the 90s. The car is currently sitting at 104,915 miles, and honestly, it radiates the type of slacker vibes that anybody with social anxiety would kill to have. You cannot touch the bottomless Randall and Dante energy of a car this unpretentious. A Prism shows up at the player haters ball in a tracksuit ready to make enemies. Is that a new cologne or did Raid switch up their formula? Christopher, there he is. Congratulations on the new relationship. I didn't know the body pillow place did installment plans. Hey, Tom! So glad you could get off work to be here. I know refreshing kiwi farms every 15 minutes is thirsty work. And it remains a cool car. Yes, cool, but only in the passive sense. Cool in the way that cynicism can't reach. It's a car that hears, "Toyota called, they want their Corolla back," and it responds with, "Your mom called. She wants nuts back." Every auto manufacturer engages in a little bit of tourism, and Toyota isn't really any different. And it all goes back to the partnership that made this car possible. You see, this was all part of a joint venture between General Motors and Toyota called NUMMI, N-U-M-M-I, short for New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated. The NUMMI plant was originally General Motors' Fremont assembly plant, and the partnership made sense not just from an economic standpoint, but as a face-saving measure. Between 1962 and 1982, the Fremont assembly was, quote, considered the worst workforce in the automotive industry in the United States. And that's directly from a rep from the United Auto Workers Union by the name of Bruce Lee. Not the Bruce Lee you're thinking of, but as that Bruce Lee once said, mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. And that seems to be what General Motors was doing by making this partnership. They were admitting that mistakes were made, and there was a chance to correct them, and mutual benefit could be had in the arrangement. But it all begs the question of how an assembly plant from the Big Three even got to such a low point. A journalist by the name of Matthew E. May answered that question in his article, The Art of Replacing Systems. The Fremont assembly plant suffered from 20% absenteeism, meaning entire shifts would be sometimes missing a fifth of their workforce, and another fifth of the workforce would rather be enjoying a fifth somewhere else. Workers were rumored to be hiding beer coolers in the cars as they were sending them down the line. And cleaning crews had to be brought in to remove all the empty liquor bottles from the employee lot at the end of every shift change. You had some people getting high, and others taking break time with prostitutes out of a nearby RV. The plant even saw 4 drug-related homicides in a single year. You had employees who couldn't care less about their job if they were working for Shinra just before the meteor hit. Some of them seemed to actively resent working for GM, as one accountant recalled workers sabotaging cars by doing things like placing Coke bottles in the door panels of the cars to annoy whoever ended up buying them. Basically, the Fremont Assembly was making GM look worse than a CEO who doesn't claim children, mistresses, or income. During the tail end of that 20-year period, GM was in a rough spot due to the fuel crisis of the 70s, the rise of import vehicles, and the miserable build quality of cars from the Fremont plant, whose productivity bordered on non-existent. So GM paired up with Toyota to create NUMMI as a joint venture to make cars that both brands could sell under their respective names. It ended up being a partnership that would last from 1984 to 2010. And over that period, the NUMMI factory produced the E90 through the E140 Toyota Corollas, as well as the Toyota Tacoma, the 80s Chevy Nova, even the Hilux pickup, as well as the Pontiac Vibe, and the Geoprism. But the partnership died because GM's gonna GM, and by the time they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2009, there was nothing to be done. Even with everybody from the mayor of Fremont to California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to encourage the automakers to find some product that would help keep the plant open. But GM had to pull out. So Toyota did too. Even though they offered to make a variant of the Prius hybrid at the plant, it just wasn't going to work out. So the NUMMI factory became the first Toyota manufacturing plant to ever close. And now the factory belongs to Tesla. 1997, Geoprism. It's like something the lead character in a Kevin Smith movie would drive. But that paradoxically bland weirdness is part of the appeal, as in the year 1997 itself. Gas was $1.22. Deep Blue was the king of chess. We lost Biggie and got stuck with Puff. Will Smith fought aliens for the second time in as many years. The Jerky Boys existed, as well as a semi-charmed life. OK Computer and frickin' Twisted Metal 2. Driving around in Spectre, being too naive to realize that every ending was a bad ending. That's what the Geo is. The automotive version of a year that had some awful things happen, but a lot of good things too. But that's most years, isn't it?
Brian, it was a trap. I showed up at Marion's house, and next thing I know, I'm in a shack next to the Mercedes airport in Argentina. Help me!
Shut up. You think you were slick, huh? Have your fun and then run out on your responsibilities?
I promise it wasn't fun at all. Okay, maybe just a little, but it was a cup.
I said shut up. Once I seduced that lady and got the time technology, I'd put it on your dumb car
Hey, leave my car out of this.
Stop interrupting. This was my chance to make you see how you messed up before taking everything away from you. I programmed every jump, and this is going to be your last, or my name isn't. Trent Falkenrath. Cha-ching.